Lost on the Road. I send a huge greeting to everyone who listens to these stories. Many times I have heard people share their stories, some with their names and others anonymously because they deal with delicate or dangerous topics. I really enjoy listening to their experiences, and that's why I decided to tell you about what happened to my cousins and me while we were traveling through Zacatecas. Their names are Ramon and Oscar, and I am Samuel. This happened when we were about 22 years old, and it has been 20 years since then. We were young and at an age where we wanted to have 1,000 adventures. We are originally from Nayarit, but we decided to take a trip together before school and the responsibilities of adult life consumed us completely. We decided to tour Zacatecas because, even though we lived close to that state, we had never visited it and wanted to see Cerro de la Bufa, its truly beautiful cathedrals, the La Quemada area, the Eden Mine, the Rafael Coronel Museum, and the famous Sierra de Organos National Park. For those who don't know this state, it is located in the north of Mexico and has semi-forested areas, plains full of vegetation, hills, mountains, and semi-desert terrains. It is a place that has a bit of everything, including towns full of tradition, magic, culture, and special celebrations, in addition to those that predominate in the rest of the country, such as the Day of the Dead. Anyway, we worked hard and studied diligently so that when vacation time came, we could grab our backpacks and leave at the first hour. The three of us were in university. Ramon was studying medicine, Oscar was pursuing a degree in tourism, and I was in accounting. We were near the last semesters, with all the enthusiasm to finish in 1 or 2 years at most, especially Ramon, since medicine is one of the most demanding careers. Seeing our efforts and desire to carry out that idea, Ramon's father, my uncle on my mother's side, told us he would lend us his car so we wouldn't have to struggle with buses. That relieved us of the need to buy tickets and pay luggage fees. On that front, we didn't have to worry. In addition, our parents also contributed so that we could have a good time and not suffer from a lack of cash. It was a dream trip. We got along like brothers. Without realizing it, time flew by. The end of the semester came, and vacation began. We had everything ready, so we loaded our suitcases into the car's trunk. Ramon sat behind the wheel, I took the passenger seat, and Oscar stretched out in the back seat. Our journey began with immense excitement and a huge desire to have a great time. During the first few hours, we listened to rock music at full volume and sang as if we were at the most important concert of our short lives. 2 hours later, we left Nayarit and entered beautiful Zacatecas. The highway greeted us with its scorching temperature, but that only fueled our adventurous spirit. We rolled down the windows and let the wind caused by our speed help cool us down. Around 2 in the afternoon, we stopped in Tlaltenango and decided to spend the rest of the afternoon there, seeing what was around, eating, and enjoying the moment. We booked a very affordable hostel, rested for a while, and went out to enjoy the nightlife, which, by the way, is calm compared to other places. We had a great time, moderated our drinking, and took care of ourselves so that the experience would remain in our heads as something spectacular and not be tainted by any tragedy or unexpected problem. We slept very comfortably, and as soon as dawn broke, we hit the road again. From there, we moved from one place to another. We visited several museums, had fun at various attractions, took as many photos as possible, danced in several night establishments, and met lovely companions who got sad when we told them we were just passing through. Of course, we left them our phone numbers in case fate dictated that we would meet again. Come on, it was a friend's outing to go wild and forget about worries. We weren't looking for love yet, especially not at that moment. So, we continued our journey, betting on fun and the desire to create incredible memories for posterity. In the following days, we expended so much energy that who knows how we kept touring the towns, museums, cathedrals, and representative areas of the municipalities we passed through. We crossed Villanueva and Tepetongo to reach Jerez, where we settled to be able to travel to Calera, Morelos, Panuco, and Vidagrande to the south. Then we moved north, took a look at Sustacacan, and headed to General Enrique Estrada with the aim of reaching Fresnillo. When we arrived in that municipality, we already felt tired. We had been traveling and on the go for several days, so our bodies missed Mom's food, our comfortable beds, the familiar environment, and the tranquility enjoyed at home. In Fresnillo, we toured peacefully, bought gifts for our families, and prepared our things to go to the last place we wanted to visit, Sierra de Organos in the municipality of Sombrerete. We intended to camp there and spend a night in contact with nature. For that reason, we paid for a higher-priced hostel, rested comfortably, and the next day we stopped by a butcher shop to buy longaniza, ribs, something tasty to drink, charcoal, matches, and various snacks. Back then, we were healthy and didn't need to restrict ourselves. Now, horrendous diabetes is breathing down Oscar's and my neck. The trip to Sierra de Organos was exciting. We felt like we were in an Old West movie. In fact, as we researched, we found out that several movies of that genre have been filmed in that territory. Mexico was chosen among several options because of its accessibility and the area's resemblance to the visual stereotype that matches the site where Native Americans and light-skinned cowboys fight. I can confirm that it's impressive to see the rock formations and the way the shrubs and occasional herbs strive to persist in such a hostile territory. Of course, the victory goes to the organs, those typical cacti that seem to raise their arms in a perpetual prayer for water. As the hours passed, we arrived at the tourist area of Sierra de Organos. We checked in and were informed that we could drive in to move around the surroundings and specific sections without restrictions or rent a cabin to spend our stay in a sheltered establishment. They even showed us a catalog to see if we were interested in booking one of those beautiful constructions strategically located to attract visitors' attention. Of course, we chose to stay in the car and passed on the lodging. A cabin didn't fit our overall plan. We wanted adventure, to stay on the road and on wheels. However, they did warn us that we had to stick to the established dirt tracks, otherwise, being such a large area, we could get lost. That was the only warning they gave us: you can get lost. They didn't talk to us about strange things or dangers that exceeded the supernatural. We didn't ask anything else either. We weren't worried at all as we had phones and GPS in the car. I think they should be more explicit, but maybe they do it that way so as not to scare visitors. Anyway, we wandered around the place, enjoyed its landscapes, and then chose a clearing where we could light a bonfire. We were quite far from everything, which awakened the adrenaline in the three of us. It wasn't hard to set up our campfire thanks to the charcoal we brought, and soon we were grilling our food. We felt wild and self-sufficient just for cooking meat without a pan. Night fell, we dined under the starry sky, and drank a few silver cans of the kind that make people happy, dancy, and talkative. Around 1 a.m, satisfied and relaxed, we started telling horror stories. We talked about witches, possessions, and demons. We recalled the stories our grandparents told us and let suggestion give a sinister touch to the space we were in. Above us, the stars shone, and we were accompanied by a symphony of crickets delighting in our fun. Oscar fell asleep around 2 a.m, and Ramon followed minutes later. I stayed awake, looking at the scenery and feeling a lump in my throat. I was happy to have reached the end of the experience with my cousins. The next day we would return to the asphalt and head straight home to resume our respective obligations. I was in those reflections when an idea crossed my mind. What if we stayed? It was a fleeting thought, one of those things you think and then forget because they are irrelevant and unrealistic. Around that time, I fell asleep. Sleep overcame me slowly, so softly that I didn't even realize how it happened. It was magical and sinister at the same time. I dreamed of my cousins, seeing us in front of the campfire, laughing and eating. Then, the sound of footsteps alerted us and awakened an indescribable anxiety in our hearts. We waited for a while and then saw an old man appear, dressed in dirty clothes and carrying an old wooden cane. The man, now illuminated by the flames, asked us for food and settled by the warmth of the fire with us. Once satisfied, the old stranger stared at us as if trying to see our souls, but his cataract-covered eyes made us feel fear, and we asked him to leave. Although the request heightened the tension of the moment, it didn't bother the old man. In fact, he thanked us for our hospitality and gave us a small crystal sphere that fit perfectly in my fist. He then told us that if we held it with faith and spoke to it with complete sincerity, it would grant us any wish. Ramon didn't bother to inquire further about the tiny artifact, took the old man's word, and wished for success in his career. Oscar, a melancholic romantic as only he could be, wished for true love, and I said that we never forget this trip. Just after I made my wish, I woke up because, in the distance, atop the rocky elevations, something started emitting shrill screams that echoed until they pulled me out of my dream. I opened my eyes abruptly, and my cousins did the same. We looked at each other and saw how our skin crawled. Oscar was the one who dared to break the silence to ask what the hell that was, and Ramon elbowed him to keep quiet, as if his instinct told him we should remain silent unless we wanted to find out firsthand who was howling like that. At times, the screams sounded human to me, but then I was sure it was an injured coyote. We intended to spend the night outdoors, but we decided to get into the car and wait for dawn. The screams were heard several times throughout the night. Silence returned at 5 in the morning, and we were relieved of our fear. Once the scorching sun of Zacatecas came back to toast the world with its fury, we packed our things, extinguished the embers properly, and prepared for the long drive back to Nayarit. Oscar took the wheel. We merged onto the road, and that's when the desperation began. We were in the middle of the desert mounds, surrounded only by cacti and dry grass, but it suddenly seemed like we had been traveling for a long time without finding the exit. Oscar thought we were almost there. Maybe we had taken a wrong turn, but he clearly remembered that we needed to go around the mound right in front of us, and then we would find the cabin area along with a main access road. As we were getting there, we chatted about various things, joked, laughed, and sang. Unfortunately, we soon realized that the dirt road stretched out ahead of the car without end in sight. A strange unease took hold of my cousins and me. Our backs turned cold, as if an ice block had been passed over them. We fell silent and tried to unravel the mystery hidden in our minds. What was happening? Were we lost? Where were we? Ramon asked after a while, "Do we have enough gas?" Oscar replied that we did, as we had filled the tank before reaching our destination. Back then, there were already cell phones with multiple functions and internet connection, but it was still a time when people weren't dependent on phones, so instead of consulting the digital map, we pulled out a brochure they had given us when we entered the area and started examining it. We tried unsuccessfully to understand where we were, concluding only that if we continued on the route, sooner or later, we would reach an exit. For that reason, Oscar kept driving, and we continued to pore over the map. After another hour, a powerful unease enveloped us, and it dawned on us that we also hadn't seen anyone nearby. We couldn't explain what was happening. However, a feeling of claustrophobia began to overtake the three of us, and eventually, I asked Oscar to stop the car because I couldn't breathe. I got out of the vehicle in a hurry, as desperate as a drowning person trying to reach the surface to breathe. Once outside, I inhaled as if I had been holding my breath for over a minute, managing to fill my lungs again. The relief burned my chest. When I looked up, I saw that Ramon was in the same state as I was. I ran to the car, as my other cousin hadn't gotten out. I found him glued to the steering wheel, cheeks puffed out, struggling to unbuckle his seatbelt. His face was already showing a shiny reddish hue. I immediately unlocked the seatbelt and pulled Oscar out. As he fell out of the car, he gasped for air with a chilling desperation. Once we calmed down, we scrutinized the enigmatic surroundings. What had just happened? We were suffocating without anything taking away our oxygen. We looked up. The sun was shining directly overhead. We had been trying to leave the Sierra for over 6 hours, and desperation was eating us alive. Ramon, being the most sensible of the group, asked us to calm down, suggesting it had been an unusual case of collective hysteria, as the human mind is powerful enough to spread negative emotions or cause illnesses stemming from fear. Oscar and I looked at him as if he had just made that up, and he clarified, "You know, like a phantom pregnancy, they're 100% real." That was true. We had all heard about it, but at that moment, the possibility of being suggestible or momentarily unbalanced didn't fit in our heads. In any case, the conversation lightened our thoughts and allowed us to clear our minds. I stood up to observe our surroundings. There were cacti everywhere, scrawny bushes, and sun-bleached rocks. Nayarit is a very hot state, reaching 40 degrees Celsius easily before, and now in 2024, surpassing 45. We were used to high temperatures, but it didn't seem so fun to be in a semi-desert area, alone, without air conditioning, outdoors, and lost. To lift our spirits, we settled under a group of organ cacti, whose thick arms provided some shade. We sat down to eat sweets and chocolates, rehydrated with some drinks, and came up with a plan to drive along the road and always head to the right. That side had the entry points and nearby highways, so sooner or later, we would find a route that would lead us out of the Sierra. We got back into the car, checked the gas, and started the journey. The road seemed to mock us. It had no end. It continued and continued. A few minutes before 7, after driving all day, the gas gauge moved to the red section of the dashboard, indicating that the fuel was about to run out. Oscar turned off the car, hit the steering wheel, and let out a long string of unprintable words. Ramon and I were as distressed as he was. We hadn't seen a single right turn the entire time, just the dirt road ahead. The heat had us exhausted, and the fear even more so. We didn't know what to think. We imagined our parents receiving news of our unexpected disappearance, suffering from our absence, or spending money they didn't have, hoping to find us alive or otherwise. With the little gas we had left, we could drive a few more kilometers, then we would be stranded, condemned to a terrible end characterized by thirst and hunger. I didn't want to, but my mind sent me horrible questions. Who would go first? The doctor? The future tourism graduate? Or me? We ate the last things we had left, tried to come up with a plan, and just when we thought we had no way out, Ramon shouted, "The cell phones." How did we forget? I have no idea, but it had never occurred to us to ask for help, call someone, or use the internet to get our bearings. We immediately headed to the car trunk and looked for our phones. We were in the early 2000s, and cell phones didn't do as much as they do now, but they were useful for the basics, especially if they had communication plans, and we had active cards just in case. All at once, Ramon, Oscar, and I let out a cry. We had no signal. It was impossible to seek help with those devices. Night began to fall, and its darkness showed us how bleak our situation was at that moment. We got into the car to shield ourselves from the cold that follows a hot day in a desert terrain and stayed there, staring into nothingness. At times, we would doze off. In other moments, we would look at each other without saying anything. At 3 a.m, the screams we had heard the day before returned, and this time, being more alert, it became clear they were not coyotes. The howls came from a throat similar to that of humans. We locked all 4 doors and forgot about hiding our fear. I heard Ramon praying and Oscar breathing heavily, as if crying. The hours felt eternal, and horror settled into our souls as the creature outside, which, demon, beast, or whatever it was, wailed and moved around the vehicle. At 5 a.m, when dawn broke, the mysterious being returned to its lair, and silence returned, but the day held no peace for us. We looked disheveled, and not understanding the circumstances led to a fight. We blamed each other. We blamed Oscar for wanting to visit the Sierra, Ramon for driving the first part of the journey, and they blamed me for not bringing a more useful cell phone. Amid the argument, Oscar erupted in screams, started the car, and floored the accelerator. Things happened too quickly. We saw the wall of a mound approaching, and the car headed straight for it without a chance to avoid the impact. Ramon screamed a long no. I covered my head with my arms, and then the world disappeared from my sight. I woke up, according to what I was told, 2 days later. Almost at the same time as my cousins. We found ourselves in a local hospital, and our families were there. The authorities reported that we crashed into a natural wall about 200 meters from the cabin settlement. The noise drew the attention of the guests, who immediately came to our aid, but they found us unconscious and injured. Emergency services transported us and contacted our families, who had already paid a fine due to finding cans of inappropriate beverages in the car. Once awake, the three of us unhesitatingly announced that we weren't drunk and described the horrific experience that led to such a terrible outcome. Deep down, I know no one believed us, maybe not even our parents, but when I mentioned the creature with the screams, I noticed some furtive glances among the police officers. I am sure they know what happened to us and are aware of what inhabits the Sierra de Organos, but they keep it hidden for the sake of tourism. Of course, over time, Ramon, Oscar, and I recovered, resumed our lives, and moved forward. The three of us graduated, succeeded in our fields, and, in one way or another, the wishes from my strange dream came true. Oscar got married and has been in his marriage for 15 years. Ramon is a successful cardiologist, and I, definitively, have never been able to forget the trip where a dirt road became the most terrifying setting I have ever been in.